Dear Frank, let's not meet. Apologies in advance as this has been written on mobile. I just finished reading a post that reminded me of a story I think belongs here. Enjoy. About 8-ish years ago, I was in high school, about 15 years old at the time. I don't really remember honestly, because I've done my best to block this from my memory. Growing up, I was very distant and kept to myself when it came to my family due to unrelated things that I won't bother to post on here. But this distance caused me to seek attention and make friends online. My parents were divorced, and my dad was married to this racist lady that lived 2 hours away in buttfuck nowhere. I rarely visited because 1, fuck him, 2, fuck her. There's nothing to do there, so I occupied myself with chat rooms. One visit, I met this guy who was 19 named DJ. We hit it off right away. After a few days of chatting non-stop, we exchanged numbers to text because internet sucked in buttfuck nowhere. He was the perfect messaging buddy. He was interesting and funny and kept my mind off of where I was at. After a few weeks, we'd be on the phone every night, literally on the phone, for 12 hours when I didn't have school, from 11 p.m. till 11 a.m. the next morning. I was a night owl. His voice seemed pretty deep for a 19-year-old, but when I mentioned it to him, he said he got that a lot. We would send pics and I thought he was cute, so we started dating. I got really attached to this dude. DJ lived in Chicago, and I kinda strict parents, so he would hang out at his Uncle Frank's house a lot. Frank was a cool dude, funny like DJ, and also witty, and just an uncle that I wish I had. Somehow, I started texting Frank too, because he was worried about DJ, and was asking me questions about him. Apparently, DJ started hanging out with the wrong crowd and smoking weed and drinking, sneaking out, etc. And his uncle wanted to steer him back on the right track. A bit before I started texting Frank, me and DJ would go on Skype. DJ's computer didn't have a webcam, but mine did. He would be on speaker, and we would have one-way cam sex. He was pretty descriptive, to be honest. It did bother me because I wanted to see him too, but I was a dumb, horny teenager, so I overlooked it. I kept hearing camera noises and was suspicious that DJ was screenshotting me, and told him if he was, that I wouldn't do this for him anymore. He told me that if he was screenshotting, that it wouldn't make a noise, as it's his phone going off. I believed him. So after months of being invested in this guy, I looked him up on Facebook, even though he told me from the beginning he didn't have one, and there he was. First profile that showed up, it's DJ. I added him and messaged him. Hey, I thought you didn't have a Facebook. Who is this? Who do you think it is? Stop messaging me, bye. Obviously confused, I texted DJ and was like, you don't know me on Facebook? He was confused, and I told him I just tried adding him on Facebook, but he was acting brand new. He apologized profusely, and said it was his cousin that his family wanted him to marry. Arranged marriages to cousins are normal in our culture. I was heartbroken, but I bought it. He said that she had access to his Facebook so she and his family could keep tabs on him. I went with the story and just stopped using Facebook to contact him. I really don't know how the rest unfolded, because I honestly did a pretty good job of blocking this from all memory, so bear with me for the next part. DJ got arrested with weed and a scale in his trunk, so they got him with intent to sell. Frank was giving me the rundown, saying that DJ was sneaking out and going to parties, and that he probably won't be responding for a little bit. I finally got DJ to friend me on Facebook, and noticed that Facebook DJ wasn't the DJ I knew, and Facebook DJ had a girlfriend. I was heartbroken again, but confused about him having a relationship when his family was strict and wanted him to marry his cousin. I finally put 2 and 2 together and realized that I was being catfished. The night I confronted him, we were on the phone, and after me finally poking holes in his story over and over, he confessed. He told me to get on Skype, and he would turn on his webcam. I was horrified. It was Frank, his 50-fucking-year-old uncle. I call him Frank because he looks exactly like Danny DeVito in It's Always Sunny. I was so horrified. I was so physically upset that I went to the bathroom and started barfing. Turns out I've been sexting a pedophile for the better part of a year. The pics he was sending me was of his actual nephew. What the fuck? It was so surreal. I did not know what to do. I closed my laptop and cried hysterically until the sun rose. I couldn't eat for days, and now I know I was in shock. I had nobody to go to. I didn't go to the police because I didn't want people finding out. After months, he started blackmailing me with the naked screenshots of our Skype calls, telling me he would leak my photos to people I knew and on Facebook. I, of course, blocked him, but I started talking to him again out of fear and probably Stockholm Syndrome or something of the sort. I eventually blocked him for good, after talking to Frank off and on for another year, but still Frank tries to contact me. The last message being 12 a.m., January 1st, 2018. Happy New Year's, Frank. Let's not meet. Frank. I was friends with a triple murderer. Okay, so I'm going to change some details in the story for the sake of being anonymous. The events in the story actually fucked with my head a bit, so it took me a while to come to terms with it. About 10 years ago, I studied abroad. I had few friends in this new country, and was glad to find a house place to live with some cool people on my age. I started hanging with this crew, which became my friends, and we used to smoke a lot of weed. Things were sweet. There was this one friend of my roommate's, Frank, that came over to our place from time to time. I thought it was odd because he was like twice everybody's age. He was very intense as a person, and made me feel slightly uncomfortable. The first time I met him, he seemed extremely suspicious of me, and would ask me all kinds of questions to suss me out. But he had a good sense of humor, and would always crack great jokes. In a way, he was kind of charming, and my roommate seemed to love him. Also, he always bought pizza. I asked one of my friends what the deal with this guy was, and he was like, "Oh, you don't know? Last year he found his wife and her brother murdered in their flat. He's under investigation, but he didn't do it." I was taken aback by this. How could they really know he didn't do it? And why do they want to hang around a person who was a potential psycho? I gave it the benefit of the doubts, but I certainly saw Frank in a new light now. Time went, and Frank came to our place almost daily. He was very clever and sly, manipulative. I got to know more about his background. He used to be in a gang when he was my age. He had been in prison most of the time in between then and now for violence. This did not help me in trusting him. I could not believe how naive my roommates were to trust this man. Then police went out and declared him a suspect. By now, this has become the biggest investigation ever in that particular area. He was interrogated, but released for lack of evidence. Back home at our place, he would sit and talk about how he was a victim of a conspiracy, and all my friends would nod and believe him. I felt crazy being the only one who didn't believe it. He must have sensed it, because he took me outside and asked me if I believed him. I said, yeah, sure, I did, because by now, I was starting to get really afraid of him. I asked him about the murders, and he told me his version of the events, where according to him, he found the bodies. It was gruesome, but I still had doubts, and to my horror, he would at another time crack jokes about the whole situation. Who in their right mind would joke about something like that? In my mind, only complete sociopath. I started researching what a psychopath or sociopath was, and learned that this guy fit every classical definition of a psychopath. I freaked out, because I couldn't figure out what he really wanted from us. I started getting paranoid and started believing that he actually planned on killing me and my roommates. I couldn't tell this to my roommates because they were fully blinded by this guy's charades and trusted him. At one point, I started sleeping with a knife in my bed. That's how scared I was that he was going to come and murder us, like he murdered those poor souls. This was a horrible time for me. On top of that, police have been tipped off about the relatively large amounts of weed being kept in the house and started raiding the place. 2 of my roommates were busted, and this marked the breakup of our collective. The day I moved out, Frank helped me with my stuff and looked at me, menacing me as I always found him. "You are alright," he said. "I actually plan on killing you, but you are alright." I cannot, he told me this. The others would laugh it off as a joke, but I saw it very differently. I was very glad to leave after hanging out with his murderer on and off for 1 years. Frank would be arrested shortly after, starting a trial that lasted several years. I later found new friends and found some of my normal life back. That's when I realized how fucked up the whole situation was. I had been isolated with all of this and had no one else to go to. A year later, I was back in my home country and followed the trial. All the craziness that surfaced about this man during the trial would convince me that I was probably right all along. He was proper mental and was convicted to 4 life sentences. He'll never be a free man again. I thought this was a party. I've debated posting this story, as this will be my second post. And although many people liked my first story, I also got many criticisms along the lines of being stupid and careless, etc. And coincidentally, this event occurred on the same holiday the first incident happened, a few days prior. So, I was on holiday with my boyfriend and his family. We hung out with his stepsister a lot, due to her being a similar age with a similar interest in alcohol. Oh, the beauty of all-inclusive holidays. This one night, we have drinks, and we leave the hotel to hang around the beach directly opposite, with food stalls and music. The atmosphere itself was busy and friendly, and we noticed a large group of fellow teenagers. They were talking and laughing, so we decided to go over and join in. The group mainly consisted of Italians, and they were excited by our English accents, and happily involved us with their conversations. We mainly talked to 3 guys, as their English was good. I am a somewhat shy person, not so much anymore. But back then I was 17 years old and particularly shy at this point in my life, so I hadn't joined in too much of the conversation. I was feeling uncomfortable, not because of anything weird, just because I felt anxious socially. After a while chatting with these people and laughing, one of the guys, who looked around 21 or 22, claimed that they were all headed to a party. Some people in the group cheered at the prospect of the party, and shortly after, a car drove over to pick them up. The majority of the people either jumped in the car, driving off cheering and shouting, or simply walked in the same direction as the car. We were left with a 21 to 22-year-old, heavily built and tall guy. He told us his name was Frank. He told us he was going to lead us to the party, as we've been asked to join them all, and we had obliged. I wasn't too keen on going, but my boyfriend and his stepsister were, and as I knew there were going to be lots of people there, I thought there would be no harm in attending a party with fellow teens. This guy starts leading us down streets, telling us how he's lived here for 2 years, and how he loves it. Note that we were not walking the same direction as the car and other people, but I put that down as maybe he was taking us through a shortcut. After about 10 to 15 minutes of walking, the guy starts getting a bit confused, and was looking around as if he didn't know which direction to take next. I found this odd, seeing as he claimed to have lived here for 2 years. He leads us down another 10 odd minutes, looking dumbfounded and more confused by the minute. But finally he says, down this street, and we arrive outside an apartment building. It was about 3 stories high, with a rusty old gate. We are led through and into an elevator. The party's just up here in my apartment, 2nd floor, the guy says, pressing the number 2 button on the elevator. The door is shut tight, and we begin moving upwards. This was when my senses kicked in hard. Something felt very off to me, and had done since he had been confused with his directions. The lift was rickety and old, and was groaning as it slowly trundled upstairs. I think it was at this point my boyfriend and sister finally realized something wasn't quite right, and believed my complaints I had made whilst walking to this apartment. After a painfully slow and shaky minute in the elevator, we came to a stop, and the doors opened to face another door, wooden and locked. The guy gets out his key and opens the door. It swings open to reveal a hallway with about 5 doors, 2 on each side, 1 at the end. This pinpoints the minute I realized one simple thing. We need to get the fuck out of here. There was no noise of a party, no music, no talking, no laughing. It was silent, completely, piercingly silent. I start tugging on my boyfriend's arm, knowing he will realize I'm feeling fucking scared. He takes my hand and gives me a reassuring squeeze, and a look that says, don't worry. I try not to. The guy at this point has gone pretty quiet compared to his non-stop chatting on the journey. Mumbling incoherent words, some English, some Italian, he leads us to the door at the end of the hallway, and it opened out onto a large balcony that mimicked a garden. The floor astroturf, and the lawn chairs dotted around. There was a table with speakers, alcohol, and cigarettes covering it. To be quite frank, it was a shite hole, but we were too occupied and shocked with the fact that we had been promised a party. And all we could see was ourselves, this weird balcony, and even this weirder older guy. He spoke with us for a moment, and my boyfriend asked him sternly where everyone else was. The guy mumbled something about them turning up soon, and said he was going to get someone's friends from another room and introduce us. When he said this, he smiled in a way that made me feel so unbelievably desperate to escape. That smile, to me, spoke volumes of this party, a party I knew would not be fun for us. He left the balcony door open, and I watched him walk to the door on the left of the exit. He knocked and spoke in what I assumed to be Italian. Then I heard several male voices respond, also in this language. The three of us turned to face each other. "We need to get the fuck out of here," I said, whispering. "I know, but don't worry, we will," my boyfriend said, and began talking quickly about a plan. The plan was to simply bolt to the door, run down the stairs next to the elevator. As we were talking, we saw the guy enter the room and shut the door. This was our chance. "Fucking go," my boyfriend said, and without a second thought, the three of us absolutely pegged it down the hallway to the door. It had several locks, and I could feel myself sweating and prickling profusely from fear as my boyfriend was quickly fumbling, opening the locks. As the last lock opened, I heard the men in the room talk progressively louder, as if they were getting nearer. And finally the door opens and we fly down the staircase at the speed of fucking light. My heart was thumping in my chest. Any trace of alcohol now pumped out of my system with a release of adrenaline. But we don't stop running. When we were out of the building, we fucking carry on, all the way back to outside our hotel. So that's my story. Who knows what his intentions were? Was it simply a misunderstanding? And he was truly waiting for friends and people to arrive, or was he planning something more sinister? Had he led us back to his flat, then gang up on us with his other friends? Who knows? But I'm glad as hell. I never found out. Scary sugar daddy encounter. So when I was younger, around 19, I'm 24 now. I was a fairly attractive girl with a bad attitude and extremely strict parents who didn't let me have a job. I lived in a very small town and everybody knew everyone else. And even if you don't quite know someone, there's a good chance that they somehow knew you. So at some point, I heard of being able to be something called a sugar baby, which basically sounded like if you were good looking and wanted to be taken care of financially by an older man, all you had to do was give them your time. Not true 99% of the time. I got on a website that was meant to arrange two people that could mutually benefit each other. And while I had talked to a lot of different types of weirdos that wanted weird things, I started to talk to this one man who claimed to be a doctor that lived about 3 hours away from me at the time. With time, you would realize that a lot of the men on the websites were full of shit and were just lonely trying to get a quick date, and then make them feel like complete losers. So when this guy, let's call him Frank, sent me a picture proof of him being a doctor, his badge, his license, and his fat bank account, I felt so insecure even though the things he was promising were really grand. Buying me a new car, paying for all my rent, sending me thousands a month, etc. And while someone may think, you're an idiot for believing him, my answer to you is both yes, I know, but also that these things are what sugar daddies are supposed to do for you anyways. Frank was French, in his late 40s, and somewhat relatively new to the area, which was his explanation for me being able to find zero trace of him existing online. But at the same time, I thought maybe the man just liked his privacy. We agreed that he would drive down the 3 or so hours to come meet me at a big hotel that was inside my city. So I figured they wouldn't pay too much attention to us, since there are people from all over the world staying at the resort. We met up, and the first thing to note is that I was horribly shy back then, so even if I realized his face didn't look that similar to the pictures he had sent, I wasn't really much about eye contact back then. He ordered some food and a drink and chatted about how much he would do for me. He was very charming at first, making light jokes and talking about his kids, etc. But towards the end, he became pushy, insisting that we could get a hotel room, and he really just wanted to cuddle me. He really missed the touch of a woman, and he wanted to sleep next to me, and that was it. I could leave in the morning, and that would be that. I kept turning him down, but he was extremely persistent about sleeping together. Then he began offering me $300 to just have very quick sex with him, just because he had driven all the way down to see me. Again, I kept turning down his money, because it takes me a long time to get comfortable with someone, even if I really needed and wanted the money. At some point, he just wanted to drive me to the ATM to show me that he was being serious and wasn't just all talk. I kept apologizing for not being able to do anything due to my shyness, which I think he saw as a weakness. Eventually, we decided to head our separate ways and split ways to our cars in the parking lot. As I got into my car and was about to pull up, he again approached me in the parking lot. I kept asking me to just come with him to the ATM just because he wanted me to have something. I only had my window rolled down a little bit, and after I started to get really irritated of his begging, I eventually left. In the end, I ended up finding out that he was literally not who he said he was at all, and everything he had given me was fake. When confronted, this nasty human being came out extremely disrespectful, and making it pretty clear that he never had a single ounce of good intention towards me. So yeah, glad I missed out on that $300.